Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. The Right Honorable Lord Black of Cross Harbor, Conrad Black, joins us today to discuss his latest book, The Political and Strategic History of the World, Volume 1. Lord Black is a successful publisher, businessman, author, and commentator. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Boom and Bust, and I want to hold up Lord Black. I do have a copy of the volume here, so I'm looking forward to getting beyond the preface in the days and weeks ahead. But thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me, Tony. Good to see you again. By the way, just for your viewers, if you lift the book up again for a moment, if you wouldn't mind. I'm getting
Absolutely.
like Ed. You remember the former mayor of New York for a whole year on TV? No, even if I asked him a question about the New York Yankees, he'd say, "As I said in my book,"
That's
But
right.
The people on the cover there, from left to right, are Moses, Socrates, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar.
So, because this takes into account the political and strategic history of the world, Volume 1, from antiquity to the Caesars. So that's a very good point to make. Thank you for that. I do want to ask you generally. Obviously, I've been a reader of your works, and you've tackled histories of the United States, of Canada, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Richard Milhous Nixon in the past, amongst others. Why did you decide to write such a sweeping history in this case?
Tony, because as you say, I sort of ramped up. I started with biographies. The first was Maurice Duplessis, the longest-serving premier of Quebec, and then as you say, I got into U.S. presidents and a strategic history of the U.S. Obviously, there's a vast literature on the history of the United States, but there wasn't a strategic history which explains in one volume, considerably smaller than that one. Naturally, so the U.S. is not that ancient a country. How it got from 3 million people on the Atlantic shore in 2 long lifetimes to having half the economic production of the world and a monopoly on atomic energy. It's an astounding story of the rise of the country, and it didn't just happen for no reason. There are reasons that I put them there. And my late friend Henry Kissinger was kind enough to write a foreword for me. And so given that, well, I feel the same as I did 30 years ago, I am getting older, I thought I would have a shot at the whole world, because I'd come to the conclusion that all of us who read history, and most of us who write it, had not by anyone's design, but just in the nature of things, got into the resigned view that to get any kind of a handle on the history of the world, you had to read 30 thick volumes, like some of the ones behind me here, and spend 10 or 15 years doing it. And I concluded that was not the case. If it was a strategic history, not purporting to give all of the cultural facts or sociological facts or economic facts, so of course those come into it. If you were doing that, you could get it in a readable sense. So it's not just a chronology, in 189 AD, the Pope excommunicated the Holy Roman Emperor or something. You could get it all into 3 good-sized volumes and divide it into chapters that are clear as to the date and subject, and subdivide it into sections. You could make it quite accessible so people could start anywhere, stop for months on end, go from back to front or in any order they wanted, and they would have it all there. If they want more detail, then you chase that up. But
Right.
at least you've got it all there. And it's not for me to, approve my own expense account, so to speak. But I believe that and the reviewers tend to agree, that I did more or less achieve that in the first volume. Now, to the average person, including me, when I started, I would have thought to get to the death of the first emperor, Roman Emperor Augustus, it wouldn't take 50,000 words. But by the time you get through with the Jews and the Greeks and the Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, Egyptians, Chinese, Indians, and the Romans up to the founding of the empire, the end of the republic, that's a lot of history. It's a lot of history. It's 2,000 years. It's a lot of history. I go back as far as I can. Well, it's still reliable history. I'm not publishing folklore, archaeology, or that kind of thing.
Sure. Lord Black, we're going to take a brief commercial break. Lots more to ask you, so please stand by. We'll be back with our guest right after these messages.